The publishing world that enveloped Poe and his contemporaries is replete with these kinds of situations. Poe is so important because he had an acute understanding of the dynamics of his publishing scene, exploiting it or being exploited by it repeatedly. McGill's discussion of a publication problem with Lenore is arresting and important. The long-line version of the poem was first published in Willis's Evening Mirror on 28 November 1844, the Pindaric version having appeared the previous year in Lowell's periodical The Pioneer. Although Poe was working in Willis's offices at that very time, Willis published the poem as if by an unknown author, stating that it came to him through his correspondence with the Kentucky poet Amelia Welby, who, according to this account, saw it in a badly printed text in the Jackson, Tennessee Advocate. Not only has the latter text never appeared, did it exist, in fact, Mabbott and others assume its reality in order to infer the existence of another printing of the poem, which has never appeared, in some New York periodical sometime before October 1844. Also a text, as I say, that has never appeared. Reflecting on the situation, McGill rightly wonders, is Poe's presence in Willis's office and his penchant for literary deception enough evidence to suggest that the entire correspondence might have been a ruse to generate publicity about a poem to which Poe would soon lay claim in an extended analysis of Welby's poems, if she even existed, in the Democratic Review? Does the unauthorized circulation of Lenore point to reprinting as a problem for Poe, or to Poe's successful manipulation of these conditions of publication? How would we be able to decide without access to Poe's signature? Even if you had it, I'm not sure that could decide the matter. As I've already suggested, many more questions could justifiably be raised in this context, but McGill's questions expose the key issue, that these textual conditions are marked by radical uncertainties. The surest way to handle the situation from an editorial point of view is to provide all the documents, not just those that an editor, however learned, may judge to be pertinent. In Pollen's case, pertinence is determined in author-centered terms. Did Poe write the text or didn't he? If Pollen thinks he did, it goes into the edition. If not, not. So the Otis review goes in, but the anonymous attack on Poe, printed by Briggs on the 15th February issue of the Broadway Journal, isn't there. After Poe took control of the journal in July, the problem grows even more pressing. This happens because Poe is now responsible for, even if he does not write, the entirety of the journal. Pollen's edition not only removes crucial contextual materials from our attention, it directs us to read in perspectives that are far from certain. A notable example comes with a series of entries in the December 13th, 20th, and 27th issues of the Broadway Journal, all dealing with the veracity of the tale we now know as the facts in the case of M. Valdemar, which Poe had just published in the December issue of the American Review under the title, The Facts in Valdemar's Case. In the 13th December issue of the Broadway Journal, Poe prints a notice of a review of the American Review article. It was seen as an article, not as a story, that had just been published in the New York Tribune, 10 December. Possibly written by Margaret Fuller, the review condemns Poe's work both for its subject matter and for the misleading, what she calls, if it's Fuller, style of giving an air of reality to fictions. In his Broadway Journal rejoinder to this review, Poe asks, "Why cannot a man talk after he is dead?" Observing with pertinent, if wicked irony, that we find it difficult to understand how any dispassionate transcendentalist can doubt the facts as we state them. You remember the story. It's about the resuscitation of this corpse. Then in the next issue, 20 December, Poe prints the American Review text under a slightly altered title. He heads The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar with a note stating that the reprint comes at a reader's request and in order to let the article speak for itself. Pollen's edition does not include the Broadway Journal reprinted text, an unfortunate omission since Poe mischievously refers to the work as an article, not as a story or a tale. The sequence of entries is then completed in the 27 December issue when Poe prints the following. Quote, "Mr. Collier, the eminent mesmerist, has written to us in reference to the extraordinary case of M. Valdemar. We quote a portion of his letter. The end of the quote. The quoted letter attests to the veracity of such mesmeric resuscitation, which is the subject of Valdemar, remarking that in this letter from Mr. Collier, I did actually restore to active animation a person who died from excessive drinking of ardent spirits. He was placed in his coffin ready for interment. Now, if Collier actually wrote those words, Poe must have found them perversely, comically, gruesomely topical and personal. But the authenticity of this letter has never been corroborated. Indeed, its need for corroboration has never even been pointed out. Pollen, like Mabbott before him, accepts its veracity, referring to its author as Collier, C-O-L-L-I-E-R, in his headnote. Poe then gives a text dated 16 December 1845 and signed Robert H. Collier, C-O-L-L-Y-E-R. Under the circumstances, we might lift some words from the letter to say of the letter itself, I have not the least doubt of the possibility of such a phenomenon as the veracity or the hoax of this letter. Poe had created false documentation for real and living authors before, in orthography, for example, and the balloon hoax. Whatever the case in this case, the management of the entire event is, if not pure poetry, pure Poe. This example illustrates a salient deficiency in both author-centered and text-centered approaches to literary works and literary history. The American Review text, the facts in Valdemar's case, gives only a certain view of that work. The Broadway Journal then gives, along with its different title and intercalary texts, an altogether different view. With the publication of those materials, we move into a close encounter of a third kind with this work, a view where all the printings, authorized or not, skeptical or otherwise, configure a textual network of remarkable wit and complexity. In publishing his tale or article, is it a story, is it a nonfiction piece, Poe makes un coup de day that summons the great god Chance, who summons in turn various unpremeditated characters. The Valdemar matter gets taken up in the periodical press on both sides of the Atlantic by many readers and reviewers, publishers and editors. All bring their own ideas and dispositions to the event. All contribute to the field of discourse by seeing it in a certain way and letting others know what they see. That's very typical of Poe. He just splatters he publishes them in certain sort of key places, knowing very well that they're going to be picked up by the culture of reprinting. And they just get disseminated in wild ways all over the world, really. The antebellum publishing scene in America and Poe's grasp of its expressive possibilities can be misleading. We must not think of this as a special case. It's not. It simply gives us a graphic picture of the complex nature of every textual condition. Restoration England supplies us with another dramatic case, as we know from the notorious problems of attribution that dog the work of Rochester, Dryden, and their respective circles of friends and enemies. Nor is it without reason that D.F. Mackenzie focused on Congreve's work in his pursuit of the idea of what he called the sociology of the text. But if the case of Poe and his world is not singular in an ontological sense, it is historically notable for two reasons. First, it clearly, and perhaps even more significant, it capaciously defines a publishing scene dominated by a volatile mix of periodicals, pursuing a variety of different purposes and goals: political, commercial, regional, cultural, and